Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody at VizConnect. So welcome to VizConnect. We're connecting you with the art of data visualization and storytelling. Here's our sessions library. We have a YouTube channel. It's nearly 2,000 subscribers now. I just checked right before we signed on to this meeting. It's at 1.94. So if we can get the 0.06 up there, we can get up to 2,000 people subbing to a channel. We're bringing great content every single week with some of the best in the community, Zen masters, ambassadors, and just data visualization stars, including Eve. We also have a LinkedIn group, which is now over 1.5 thousand members, and we include a lot of information, including recordings of our sessions, blogs about the sessions, and so forth. So it gives you a chance to connect with our community and gives you more information and more insight as to what you can gain from our community. So our presenter today is Eve Thomas. I've known Eve for quite a while. I'm lucky enough to see some of the vizzes that she produces before they become vizzes of the day. And she just has great storytelling technique and just somebody that you would really want to learn from. So she's a data visualization consultant with a background of teaching and HR. She is passionate about education and promoting equal opportunities. She loves creating visualizations that make both data fun and accessible to users of all ages. She is a Tableau public featured author. She's a 3-time Visit of the Day winner and an active community member. And without further ado, let's welcome Eve.
Hi guys, it's great to be here with you today. Adam's just introed me, but I suppose what I want to add to that is that the reason I've picked to do storytelling today is because I feel like it's something that's quite overlooked a lot of the time, and it can really help to add real impact to your visualizations. And if you've looked at my Tableau public, you'll know that one of the main things I love doing when it comes to vizzing is creating vizzes that raise awareness. And I think for that, you really need to be able to add impact to your vizzes. And that's, you can really do that with effective storytelling. And the other reason that I chose storytelling today is because, for those of you that don't know, I recently started an initiative called Viz to Educate along with Vinod, and our aim there is to create an online bank of resources for teachers and to help empower teachers. And again, storytelling is so important to create those visualizations with that impact we're looking for, not just to empower teachers, but also to get kids really interested in data. And not only does storytelling help create impact, but to me, it also helps spark interest. And so I'm hoping that this session will also encourage some of our newbies to get involved with public initiatives, Viz to Educate, but also some of the other ones out there, because there's so many great initiatives for you guys to get involved with. So I'm going to jump straight in because we've had enough of intros now. I'm going to switch off my camera because it's really distracting seeing my head bobbing up and down. And I have the best range of expressions in the world, and I don't want them immortalized on camera. So I'm going to stop the video for now. I will come back on later to answer any questions for you guys. So I'm going to jump straight into storytelling in Tableau. Back to basics. So we've already introed, so I'm going to jump straight in. So this is a rough outline of today's plan for you guys. First, we're going to look at checking out your data, the pros of planning, the 5 W's, and I've named this Andy's method. I always refer back to this as Andy's method because this is the first thing that Andy Krubel ever taught me at the data school. He actually has written a fantastic blog on this. He calls it, I think, 4 W's and 1 H. But I have linked that in for you on this presentation, and I'll make sure these slides are available to you guys afterwards. And then the 5 W's is the main focus of this presentation, and I'm going to actually demo that around halfway through to really show you how I actually implement the 5 W's when I'm working on visualizations. So straight into checking out your data. So guys, this is the most important part of data building visualizations for me. So, make your life easier, investigate your data before you start. And for me, the first thing when I do that I do when it comes to investigating my data is to figure out what I need and what I don't need. For me, there is nothing more stressful than vizzing and having a load of messy data, cluttered data that essentially I don't need. So if you don't need it, kill it, get rid of it. So that is the first step. It may be that you have a data source where actually every field in there you do need, but maybe, Tableau is really slow, it's taking a long time to load, in which case you might want to still think of trying to cut that data down. And in that case, I'll look at the range of my data. Now, what I mean by that is, let's say if you have a data set spanning 200 years across every country in the world, do you really need all of that data to tell an effective story? So do you need 200 years? Maybe you don't. Maybe you can look over a range of 50 years. Or if you really want to keep the 200 years, maybe you can focus in on just the top 10 countries. So again, cut it down, make it easier to work with, and it will also reduce your rendering time, which will keep you sane. And the last point, which is probably the most important, is to make sure that you understand the values and measures in your data. I actually was faced with this a couple of weeks ago. I was working with temperature data, and halfway through, I realized that I had values that were both in Fahrenheit and centigrade. I'm not sure how I managed to miss that because the Fahrenheits were quite high, but that really does skew your data if you don't realize that that's in there. So, in that case, I did not plan enough ahead. I needed to check my data more closely in that case. So one way to do this would be to go back to the source of your data, ask some questions. How was the data collected? Why was the data collected? And what were they investigating when they collected that data? And that, if you start off with this, it's going to make your life so much easier when you're starting to build out your story. So the data I'm using, I don't know if you can actually quite see that, but this was Makeover Monday 2020, week 22. And it's Viz5 data. And I've picked this data because you've got a load of really interesting fields in there. There's so many interesting stories we can bring out of this data. And it is one of my Makeover Monday. I love Makeover Monday. I'm an avid, I'm always involved with Makeover Monday. And the Viz5 weeks are brilliant. I think, it's really they're data sets where you can help raise awareness. So my favorite type of data to work with, and it's you're visiting for a good cause and you are helping to empower people. So if you want to get involved on a community project, Makeover Monday is great, and they do Viz5s usually once a month. So I really recommend checking that out. Again, I've linked in the data we're using today here, and I have just taken a couple of screenshots of the data as well. So we've got some really good dimensions in here, as you can see, lots of different things that we can start investigating. Immediately I can see that I've got dates in here, I've got geodata, which is going to be really, really good to visualize. And we've got quite a few measures as well, which I'll be investigating later on. So before we do that, why should you plan out your data? So the pros of planning, asking the right questions is so important. And why do we do that? A, it helps you create some structure and it keeps you on track. And what I mean by that is going off on a tangent, basically waffling, but with charts, is not going to be an effective storytelling method. The dreaded data rabbit hole, I go down rabbit holes all the time when I'm visiting. I'm sure that I would bet everyone in the community who has just a couple of vizzes on their Tableau public will tell you that they've fallen down a data rabbit hole. It's very easy to do. If you ask the right questions at the beginning, you will avoid this. And it just helps you to create a clear and effective narrative, which is what you want when you're trying to create impact and you want to just portray that data as effectively and cleanly as possible. So, and now we're on to the 5 W's. So 4 W's and 1 H, which is what how Andy blogs about it. I prefer the 5 W's. I learned 5 W's at school and it just makes it easier for me to remember. Again, I've linked in Andy's blog here. Do check that out because he goes into a lot more detail than I'm going to go into. And, he taught me that this is the first thing he ever taught me before I even joined the data school. I actually did an extra session with the information lab. And a year and a half later, this is still my go-to. If I'm ever stuck creating a visualization, if I just feel like the story is not clean enough, whatever, I would always go back to this. And, it's simple, but it's brilliant. And I think that it really does help you just create those building blocks to make a fantastic visualization. So I've gone a bit mad with the colors here, so apologies. These are the 5 W's: where, when, what, why, and who. Andy, he changes why to how. I'm not really sure why he does that, so I put both there. And this is this is a very simplified breakdown of what I'm going to be using these headings for. So where is location data, geodata? So if you've got your data set, this is usually the first one I'll start out with because I love a map. They just look great, and it's just so visual. And I think that a lot of people just, people love maps. If you go onto my Tableau public, you'll know that I'm a lover of Mapbox as well. So a map can really just make your visualization look, really, really professional, and just adds a lot of interest. So when you're looking for where, I'll immediately look to see if I've got geodata. If I have, great. Even if you haven't, when it comes to location data, you might be looking at something else there. So one example I came across recently was vaccines. I didn't actually have any geodata, but I did have like institute kind of data. So universities and different organizations that were testing vaccines. So that was effectively my location data. So I couldn't make a map, but I could make a bar chart, and I could show how many trials, etc., that different locations were doing. So that's your where. Your when is usually a time series. That could be years, months, it could be seasons. Sometimes it could be just within a 24-hour period. Usually when it comes to when, you're looking over time. What is interesting, so at this point I tend to look at my dimensions and to see what can be further explored. Can anything be grouped together? How many levels can we go down? How deep can you go into your data? That's your what. Your why is another one that's kind of interesting. I feel it's quite open to interpretation. Usually here I'm comparing measures and investigating causes, etc. Andy, I think, usually used to say to look at sort of scatter plots at this point, or box plots. I'm a bit more open in terms of the chart types, because the way I'll approach this, and I'll show you this in a moment, is that I'll take each of these words and I'll form a question. And so long as I'm answering that question with the chart that I've chosen, I'm happy. And lastly, and for this data set particularly, I think this is the most important, is who. So does your data set include people? Who or what is at the center of your data? So in this case, it's going to be people. Each row of this data represents an individual girl. And I think that you'll see when I sort of demo it later, but for me, that makes this data set even more interesting, and it really does help you draw out those individual stories of each individual girl in this data set. But equally, if you had a data set on, let's say, plastic use, so one I saw recently, I think it was a viz by Sarah Bartlett, was about the life of a plastic bag. It was brilliant. That is who your data is about, a plastic bag, and that is at the center of your data. So that is your who, okay? So I've demoed it here on how I use these. So where is quite easy. Where is just, where is this happening? So geodata, I already know that I'm going to make a map of districts and I'm going to color them by number of places. So where is sorted. When, my question there is, when do girls seek help? Very simple. Again, I'm looking for a time series, as I mentioned before, and I know that I've got dates in this data set. What for me will be what recommendations are being made and what action is being taken to help these girls. Why is, why do the girls need or seek help? So quite a simple question, and I think there's enough in there to answer that question quite well. And again, the most important thing for me in this data set is who. So how old are the girls seeking help? I actually want to try and make a short bio per individual and just highlight the individual behind the data. And this is something a little bit different. I just thought I'd put this on here because usually I'll do this by hand, but this is kind of how I sometimes sort out my data. So when it comes to this data, I have had a quick look already, and I know that I'm actually not going to use the measures at all. I'm just going to use the dimensions, and I'm going to use count by D to answer these questions. I've used the color code here, so usually I'll do this with color pencils or pens. Some people draw out their visualizations and they actually draw out the full design. Usually for me, I kind of have it in my head and I don't really need to do that. But for me, I need to kind of organize my data and my measures and my dimensions. So this is an example of that. I've just put a little color code next to each one and I know exactly where I'm going to use it. So on this visualization, I've also added on this presentation, I've added a few useful links for you guys. So Andy's blog is there, Makeup Monday's there. I think Adam's already given me the link to that. Op fistula is what the Viz5 data is based on at the moment, of this one. So click there for the link to that. And we've got Viz to educate on there as well, just in case you want to create a Viz for us. So I'm actually going to go straight into Tableau now because I think that that's more fun. So as you can probably see here, so I don't know if you saw before, let me quickly flip back. So originally I had all of these measures in my data. I decided that I didn't need those. So what I've effectively done is I've just hidden them. So they were here, and now to me this looks a lot cleaner. So what I've done at the bottom here, I don't know if you can see, is I've actually set up my sheets ready. So I've got my where, my when, my who. I'm going to do 2 charts for who, I think, because that's what I really want to highlight in the data. And then I've got my why and my what. So I'm going to start with where, because to me this is, I tend to go for maps first. I find it just much easier. And full disclosure, everyone, I have added a shapefile to this data because this morning, for some reason, Tableau just would not play ball for me. So I do have a district shapefile in here, which has my districts for Tanzania. So I've just double clicked on that and that's given me my district straight away. I'm gonna add district name to detail just so I can get those up separately. And then I'm gonna use my ID here and I'm gonna count distinct it on color. And I'm gonna use the count distinct ID all the way through this visualization. I'm gonna switch the colors now because I don't like the auto colors. I like to switch it up a bit. So I'm gonna go for this nice tealy color, and I'm also going to fix my map layers now. So I'm going to take off the names there. I'm going to leave the province borders on, and I'm also going to take out land cover and just make that a little bit more clean. I may later go into Mapbox and actually make that a little bit more exciting, but for now I'm going to leave it like that. I've already got my questions ready on here as well. I think that when you're building out a visualization, that can make life a bit easier for you. So which districts have the most admissions? And I've answered that already. The Serengeti is by far the highest, and that is followed by Tarim. So I've already answered that first question there. So I'm going to go straight on to when. And when are the girls seeking help? There's my question. These are the questions that I laid out just a moment ago in the presentation, so I've already put them into Tableau. So when are the girls seeking help? This is a very, I'm going to do a line chart for this. I already know that because it's over time, it's a time series, and I think that's a really simple and effective way to show that. So I'm going to find my date, and I've got my date of arrival there. I'm going to drag that onto columns, and I think I might do it by month actually. Yeah, I think I'll do it by month. I've got more than enough points in there. And again, I'm actually going to do count of ID here. So let's do count distinct ID. And immediately that looks very interesting to me. So I can see straight away that I've got the most admissions in December. And in fact, that is also a December peak there and another December peak. So every December, they seem to have a big rise in admissions. For me, that immediately is a really interesting story point. You know, why is that? And I did look into this, and in Tanzania, December is what they call the cutting season. So this data set is all about female genital mutilation. Quite, well, it's quite a, I think for some people this is quite a difficult data set to work with actually, and it's one of those data sets that does raise awareness, and you know, it's one that I really want to do justice because I think it's really important to highlight these issues. So doing your research is really, really important, and it will really help you bring your story together. So I'm actually going to add a little annotation point here. And I don't want to type too much because I know that that is not that great to hear. So I'm just going to, the typing's too loud, I apologize. There we go. So that's my annotation point there. Go. Obviously, you can format this. I'm going to say no fill. I'm going to put a border around this and I'm going to make it that nice turquoise colour. It's my favourite colour. There we go. And I'm actually going to match the colour of the chart to that as well. And there we go. Obviously, you can so that is also a very strange number because I've managed to. There we go. Okay, so there's my annotation there. I'm actually also going to add a data label on there. I'm going to just label the max value. There we go. And I think that for now, I'm going to leave it like that. Again, you can format these. You can format your charts later. So there is my when. So I've answered this question. When are girls seeking help? They tend to seek help in the month of December. There was a particular steep rise in December 2018. Again, that's something that I might research into. Maybe there were more safe houses open at that time. Maybe there's another reason for that. I'm not really sure. But that's something that I might try to investigate later on as well. So I've done where, I've done when. I'm going to go on to who. Now, for me, this is probably the most important part of this visualization. This is what I'm really going to be focusing my story on. So I'm actually going to do two. And the first one I'm going to focus very much on age. So what I've done is we've got age and arrival in years here. I have created a group for this, and I'll show you in a moment. It's quite simple what I've done. If I go into manual, I've actually just grouped anyone under the age of 5 into one, just because they all had just one value in each one. So it made more sense to group it to me, and that's all I've done there. So there's my age bins, and to create, my age group, and to do this, I've just literally said create group, and I group them together there. So I've just grouped ages 1 to 4. So that's how I've done that. Again, I'm going to do count of ID here. Let's do a count distinct. And I actually quite like the look of that. I think that looks really good. I'm going to rotate these labels. I'm going to change this to my color of choice. And I'm actually going to leave that like that for now because I think that looks good. That's in the order I want. And I like the look of that. So immediately you can see that girls between 10 and 16 tend to be the ones more at risk, particularly 12, 13 and 14. This age group has got a lot of cases. So again, I might look into that. I'm not entirely sure why that would be, but again, I'll probably research around that and I'll be adding that into my narrative as well. The second one for me, so I've done one who and I've just focused on age. On this one, I want to really highlight each individual in this data set. So I feel like I feel like this has good impact, but you can't really, to me, this is 157 individuals here. And although you can see that age 14, is the highest, I don't know anything about those individual people behind that data. At the moment, they're still numbers, and I want to really make them individuals. So I'm going to, once again, drag my come on. I don't know why that's doing that. Okay, let's not worry about that. Let's just do this. It worked here. Okay, I'm going to take this off. There we go. So I have my ages across the top there, and this time I'm going to just drag ID onto color, add all members. Now I know that's very colorful, so we don't have to leave it on color. I'm actually going to put it back onto detail. And now I have an individual little box for each person, which I quite like. I'm going to change this to a circle. There we go. And I'm going to make them a little bit smaller, not that small. There we go. So each of these is an individual, is a girl. And I actually quite like this because each one of these little dots represents a person. And as I hover over them, I can actually add to their story. So I'm going to add into my tooltip age on arrival. I actually quite like this question, do you go to school? Because that's something everyone can relate to, and education is so important. I'm going to put district on there, just so I know a bit about their background and where they're from. Type of case is really important, so that is going to go in there as well. Who brought them to the safe house, I think, is actually really interesting. I would like to know whether it's a family member or whether it's the police. I want to see whether the government is involved there. So that's quite interesting. And I think I might add religion in there as well. Again, a bit of background and sort of, tells you a bit about their life. And suggestion from social welfare officer is going to be the recommendation of how to help them. So that is going to go in there as well. So I'm going to check out this tooltip. I'm going to take off the top two because we don't want to repeat that. Not quite in the order that I would want, but I will fix that later. Let's just see whether we've got everything. And yeah, I think this, immediately each of these is becoming more of an individual. You're starting to see the story behind each girl here. And some of this is really, really harrowing as well. So at the moment, I'm in the 6 bracket here. So this little girl is 6 years old, and she's from the district of Tarim, which we know is one of the busier districts when it comes to evictions. She's never been to school. She's Christian, and this was a case of child marriage at just 6 years old. And she was brought in by a concerned member of the community, and she was only offered short-term protection. I'd actually be really interested to know when she was brought in. Let's add date in there as well. That probably won't be in there at the moment, so let's find date of arrival. We'll see when that was. I think that could be quite interesting. So let's see if we can find her again. There she is. So she came in the 8th of November 2018. So immediately now, if she was only offered short-term protection, I'm wondering whether she's okay at the moment and where she is. Was she sent back to her family? Has she had to seek help again since then? So, you really start to reveal these stories behind these children. I might hover over 5 and have a look. There's one there for violence. There's quite a lot of cases of violence that you find in this data set, which is really, really sad. And this little girl is only 5. She's from Roya. Also never been to school. We don't have any information about religion for her, but we know that she was brought in for a case of violence by the police, and that was in 2017, and she was offered short-term protection as well. So you wonder where she is now, whether she's safe. So this is really revealing now some stories behind the individuals. And for this type of data set, as I said, I think that's so important. So I really like this chart. So this one's definitely going to be going into my final dashboard. I'm now going to go on to why. So why do girls seek help? Now this is also really important. It's really important to help us tell our story. So again, this is the where, what, and why. This is my why question. And again, I've added this question at the top here, so I can, rather than refer back to my original plan, I just know where my question is straight away without having to do that. So that's the question I'm answering. So for me, this is going to be the type of case. So I'm going to put this into rows. Let's see what we've got in here. Okay, so we've got violence, rape. Female genital mutilation is what I'm expecting will be the highest in this data set. So again, let's get our count of ID there. Count of ID, there we go. Yeah, and that is more or less as I expected. Female genital mutilation is definitely the highest there. For me, I'm not actually massively fond of a simple bar chart. I like to jazz them up a bit. So I think I'm going to make this a rounded bar. So what I have to do is add average equals 0, and then I've just typed that in. I'm going to drag that down to the axes there, and it will come up like this. It'll look a bit funky. It's not going to stay like that. It's okay. We're going to switch this to a line, and then I'm going to drag measure names over and put it on the path in my marks card, and then I've got a line here. I'm then going to make that thicker, and there is my rounded bar. I am going to add a label to this. Now, because it's a line, you do have a line or a label on each end of the line. So all you have to do there is go to line ends and untick end of line. And there we go. I'm gonna change this to match the mark color. I'm gonna make it bold so you can actually see it. I'm gonna make it size 11 there, and I'm gonna change this to the color of the rest of my dashboard. And I'm also going to make these a bit bigger so you can actually see them. Smiley ball medium actually, and then I will make it size 11, make it bold. There we go. So why do girls seek help? I know that 596 sought help with female genital mutilation, and a lot of them also sought help for violence. I think I'm actually going to change this to a percentage. Just because, and I'm going to do that with a quick table calculation, a percent of total, and I'm actually going to instead. I think that's a bit better actually, because I think that creates a bit more impact and it makes it that much easier to read. So I can say now that 70% of girls sought help for genital mutilation and 12% sought help for violence, which to me is alarmingly high. So I think that answers my why. And now I need to go on to my what. So to me, the question I've asked for what was the suggested course of action? And we know that we have that because we just used it on our WHO chart for the suggestion of a social welfare officer. So I'm going to put that into rows. I'm going to see what suggestions they had. So we've got prosecution there. I'll be really interested to see how high that is actually. Short-term protection we know is probably quite high because all the examples we pulled out of the WHO data, that was the suggested course of action. And long-term protection I'd be interested to see as well. So I'm going to again add my count of ID, my distinct count of ID to the top there. And interesting, so short-term protection is massively higher than everything else. So once again, I am going to stop sharing the screen. Okay, there we go. Maybe that's better. Let's make this a rounded bar as well. Sorry about that. I'm once again going to drag my average and then 0 in brackets to the axis at the bottom, and then again it looks a bit funky. Let's change it from automatic to line, and I'm just going to drag my measure names to the path on marks card, and I'm going to increase the size of this. This is a really easy way to make a rounded bar chart, by the way, guys, if you ever wondered how. So I'm going to color it again the same as all of my other charts, so we have some consistency there. And once again, I'm going to label this. Let's make it size 11. Let's make it bold, and let's match the mark color as well. There we go. Oh, I've forgotten to take the label off at the beginning of the line. There we go. And I think again I might make this a percentage actually, just because I do think it's a little bit easier to read. So quick table calculation, percent of total. Let's drag that over to the label as well, and I'm going to make this just have one decimal place. Again, just a bit more concise. There we go. And again, over 70% were offered short-term protection. 14% actually ended in prosecution, which I'm surprised at. I thought that would be a bit lower, so that's good to know, although it could be a hell of a lot higher. Long-term protection is only 6.3%, which is, considering the severity of the reasons these girls are coming in for help, does seem very low to me. So I do wonder why that is. Maybe there's difficulty there, maybe there's not enough staffing. So that would be interesting to have a sort of a deeper delve into as well. So now I'm asking myself, have I answered this question? I'll say that I have answered this question, but it could be, I feel like I could sort of delve a bit deeper here. So for example, what I mean by that is I know that the girls, 70% came in for female genital mutilation. And I know what they're offered, but I don't know what percentage of the girls that came in for female genital mutilation were, for example, offered short-term protection. I don't quite know that level. So what I'm thinking now is maybe I could combine my why, my what. So again, you don't have to necessarily stick to these as separate charts either. You can combine these. So let's see what we can do. So I'm going to drag my type of case onto rows. And I'm going to actually drag my suggestion into there as well. Okay, so now I'm splitting this, so I think that this tells me a little bit more information just glancing at this chart already. So I'm going to add my count of ID in. There we go. Okay, I'm going to order that by size, and then I'm also going to order this as well, and I'm going to do that. There we go. So now I know that female genital mutilations at the top because we've got the most cases. So it's in the correct. I think that's a much easier way for people to read this. So again, I've got basic bar charts here, and I'm not the biggest fan of the basic bar chart. I would like to do something a little bit different. So I could go for a rounded bar again. Let's drag that down. And actually, I might go a step further and try something different. So let's try adding another. So I've just typed in average there and put the 0 in brackets. I've already got, and I'm actually going to drag that above the count there. So I've got my average equals 0. I've got my count distinct ID, and then my average equals 0. And it's important they're in that order for what I want to do here. And rather than change it to a line, I'm actually going to change it to a polygon. And I quite like that. I think this is quite cool. This randomly came up on a GIF a couple of days ago on Tableau Public, and I have no idea who did it. But I think you're great. So if you want to tell me who you are, I'm more than happy to post this and tag you in it when it's on my. I'm going to take that off the values. The one thing I can't figure out, and if the person who did design this chart can enlighten me, I'll be very grateful, is how I label the end here. I haven't quite managed to get there. So I'm going to label it in a different way. So I'm going to take my ID here. I'm going to put it up here. Let's do that. This will look a bit odd for a second. Let's make it an attribute, and let's make it a count distinct. I have to give up on that idea. No, that has like work, doesn't it? Yeah, there we go. Can I put that there? Will that still work? Nope, I'm going to do it that way. Okay, so I'm going to center this. That took much longer than I thought it was going to. Apologies. There we go. So I know that 426 girls who went in for female genital mutilation were offered short-term protection. And, you can make, I think this is quite a fun chart, but you can colour this how you want to. So I'm going to colour this by type of case. I'm just going to drag that one to colour. And my favourite colour scheme is already preset on there. I don't know how I managed that. Let's make this so like these. Let me decrease the opacity there, and I'm actually going to duplicate this, and I'm going to make the second one a line. going to just bit of a border on that. I think that looks quite cool. So let's fill that. There we go. I like that. I think that's cool. I'm going to make that a little tiny bit better. Okay. I quite like that chart. I think that's a bit different. So anyway, you can play around with this. You know, you can do whichever. To me, so long as the chart answers your question, I'm not that fussy about which charts people pick. I tend to try to find something quite simple to read if possible, especially if I'm doing something like Visuals that educate, because obviously you're aiming at children. So bar charts, line charts, if you can make bar charts fun, great, but you want something that kids will be able to read easily. Then again, I do love some of the more complex charts. Every time I log on to Tableau Public at the moment, I seem to discover a new one, and it's super exciting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start building out my viz. So I've got my title already, because I'm trying to avoid typing as much as possible, because I know it's really loud on this laptop. And I've got my where, when, who, my why, my what, my why what. So when I'm building this out, I might decide to actually use these bars instead. I haven't decided yet. But I'm going to start out with where, because I feel like that's a good place to start. Ooh, that is now. I'm going to immediately get rid of the container there. Okay, so I don't actually think I need this title on there, just because I think it's quite obvious what the map is showing. So I've got my map in there. I'm actually going to add a bit of padding around this as well, just because I like to have a bit of a border. This is me just building a bit straight out in Tableau. Occasionally I'll plan them ahead, but usually I prefer just to play around and build it as I go. So I'm going to start with my map. Let's just to show where this is occurring in Tanzania. And again, as we said before, the Serengeti is by far the biggest district. And then straight after that, I think I'm going to actually add my when, because I think that's really important in this narrative as well. So a bit more space there, I think. I'm actually going to put a blank in here as well. So I'm going to delete that one. Okay, so good. I'm going to obviously, oh, that's going in the right place now. I'm going to have to reformat some of this. But there is my when am I girls? So that's the second part of my narrative in there already. The next bit is going to be the fun bit, because this is the who, and this to me, as I said before, is the most important part. So I'm actually going to use both of these charts. I think they could both look good. Shouldn't have gotten rid of that blank before. Put that back in. So what age are the girls who seek help? So I'm going to combine this to make one chart. So something like that. Again, you can probably word this a little bit better later on. But this is essentially what I want people to be able to do. I want them to find out about each individual in this. So this is my first chart. This is just showing age. So we know that there's 157 girls who were admitted when they were 14 years old. And then I'm going to add in my who underneath that. Now, this is going to need a bit more space, this chart. I have to make this full screen as well. There we go. Entire view. Okay. Now, how far do I need to go down? Let's have a look. I think it's going to have to go quite far, actually. So, oh, perfect. There we go. I think this was really cool, actually. So, visually, I think that looks really great. So, I'm going to get rid of this title for anything. I'm also going to get rid of the ages, because they actually link up quite nicely here. So I like that. I think that looks really, really cool. I'm going to make that a tiny bit smaller. Yeah. And there is my who. Now that's really, for me, the focus of this viz. It's all about who this data is about. It's about empowering these individuals and giving them a voice. So this chart for me, I think this is my favourite part of the dashboard, easy. So I really like that. And then I need to answer my what and my why. So I could either go for the two separate bar charts here, or I could go for our random wacky combined chart. I think I might go random. Apologies for the noise there. I like that. I'm going to have to do this for you. That's going to look very, very tiny for a moment. So down. Okay. Okay, there we go. So I think that's looking pretty cool. I need to fix the title on that one. And I'm going to cheat and copy and paste these. So, first question, and then trying to minimize the time. Okay, good. Let's center that. There we go. So you've got the start of a really good narrative here. So we've got where, when, who, and that for me is the real focus of this dashboard. And then you've got the what and the why. So we could keep this chart. I could have the two bar charts in here. If I have to do two bar charts, I may change the filtering. So, or I might add a parameter in there. So I might say why, and then maybe you could hover over this and it will actually filter this down. And that could be another way that you could have the same results as this one, where you can see the split. If I had time, I would maybe consider making this a set action. So you could click on FMG and then it could break out into these. I'm not sure if I can do a set action with this chart type. I'm assuming I can. And if I have a bit more time later on, I might go at that. But that's just an example of how you can start to build out a story from a data set. And this is how I approach this one. I had one I built earlier, but I think actually it's pretty much the same. I think I did it by daily cases instead there. And I've added a call to action to the bottom here as well, which I think for particularly a viz where you're trying to raise awareness is a really cool thing to add. So you could add a link in here to find out more about Operation Fistula, about Hope for Girls for Women and Women in Tanzania. You could also add any links to your data sources as well here. So that is how I would finish off this viz. I don't know whether did I have it ready? I don't think I did. That is my VizConnect calendars. That's the one I'm looking for. Why? Come on. Okay. So originally when I did this viz, it looked pretty different. There it is. So this was my finished viz when I did it at the time. I think I approached it in a bit of a different way. I did have a Mapbox map, which I added to make it look a little bit more interesting. Same chart there for my when. I did a similar one for age grad missions. I didn't actually add the bar chart last time, and I actually think it looks better with it. So I think that's an improvement. And I took, I had a different course of action for them actually. I did just percentages for the reason for seeking shelter, and then I just suggested courses of action. So looking back, I think that actually I could have done a bit more to really bring out that narrative. And I had my call to action at the bottom. So, this is just like one way that I interpreted this data. I think you could have interpreted this in many different ways, and there are fantastic vizzes for this week for Make Up Monday. But yeah, I hope this gives you a bit of insight into just how to approach particularly a big data set and find a story in it. And I really do think that this method of just the where, when, who, why and what really does help. So as I said, I'll make sure that these slides are available for you guys to have a look at. And hopefully that will encourage a few of you who weren't really sure where to start or how to get involved in some community projects. Hopefully that will encourage you guys to participate. And yeah, do you guys have any questions?
Excellent presentation, Eve. We are running a little short on time, but we do have two questions. Both are from Joshua Goldberg. The first one is on the topic of rabbit holes. I personally know it's tough for me to pause working on a project if I'm stuck on something. Sometimes I try to give myself a designated amount of time to work on the project for the day before pausing on it until another time. Have you dealt with this challenge before? And either way, what recommendations do you have for confronting this?
It's a really good question, actually. I have before had definitely had time constraints and had to sort of think to myself, right, I'm going to have to just step away from this and start something new and then come back to it. I would say going back to the what, where. So sometimes usually this is my go-to if I get stuck. So I won't always start out using what, when, where, and how. The 5 W's. Sometimes I'll start building something and then I'll hit that kind of wall and I'll be like, right, I need to take a step back. And I will then go back to those questions, set out my 5 questions and ask myself, have I even answered these questions? And if there's one I haven't answered, I'll sort of start with that. Also, if I hit a brick wall, sometimes I sort of think to myself, right, what do I know is going to work and what do I feel comfortable doing? So for me, it's always something like mapping. I love making maps. So if I'm ever stuck and I've got geodata, I'll be like, right, I'm going to go make my map and I'm going to come back. So yeah, I would say just, sometimes stepping back, giving yourself 5 minutes and then going back to the basics really does help. Another thing you could do is get feedback from other members of the community if you're really stuck. Adam, you've already said that you've viewed a few of my vizzes before I publish them, and I think that it's really helpful to get a second set of eyes as well. So that's another thing I would recommend. I'm hoping that pretty much answers your question there.
Very good, very good. The second question is, when starting with a new data set, do you prefer to generate with research questions first, or start by exploring trends within the data to explore what types of relevant visualizations and questions might be practical / applicable for the data set?
Oh, that is a really good question, and I'd say it varies depending on the data set. I think that one of the first things I always do actually is I'll look at how big the data set is and how manageable it is, because I think for me, I do find it quite stressful, as I said, when I'm faced with really messy, chaotic data. So if I can cut that down to begin with, I will. And Tableau is great in that you can just hide fields. So if it comes to a point where you're like, oh, actually, I could have used that one, you can just unhide it, so you can bring it back. But for me, first, I'll try to make it a bit more manageable and a bit more approachable. But yeah, there are times when sometimes I open up a data set and it just looks like it could be a lot of fun, and I'm like, oh, what can I make with this? And I'll just make a few charts and just throw them out there. But then I will always come back to asking my basic questions, especially if I'm going to be doing a long form viz as well, or if I'm going to be doing a slightly larger project, because I think then it is really important to have that structure. So I will always go back to the 5 W's or just asking my sort of basic questions. And then, sometimes when it comes to telling a story as well, I'll find trends in data and then that'll make me think, right, I'll write it, that's really interesting. I want to research that further and I'll write that down. And then I will research as I go. So it really does vary on the data set, but yeah, usually I'll always go back to that structure if it's going to be anything that's more than one chart.
Makes perfect sense. Oftentimes you may have data with only 5 rows and in 6 columns or 2 columns, and there's not a lot of exploration done on that. It's pretty apparent what you got when you see it. But other times you have more in-depth data sets that you need to explore. So there's a lot of things that you have to look at, but keeping yourself within the constraints that you put there in answering questions from a storytelling perspective really makes it easier to give somebody a framework in which to work from. So that's really great. For a minute or two, if you could explain Viz2Educate, your initiative with Vinode, to help describe this initiative and its potential impact and how people can get involved.
Yeah, so I've put links for this on the presentation today, so you will have those. But the website is just viz-to-educate.com, so it's really easy to find. And the basic aim for that initiative is we want everyone in the community to get involved, and what we want to do is create a bank of free resources for teachers. And that's it's free to access for them, especially if it's Tableau public, because we all know that's a free platform. We're also interested in other data viz as well. So if you do DJ3S or anything like that that has a free platform, then you're more than welcome to contribute that way as well. But it's mostly focused on Tableau because me and Vino both do Tableau. So what we want to do is try to create these resources to help to assist teachers in teaching children. So we really want them to be in line with a global syllabus or the syllabus from your country. So this month is geography. It is coming to the end of that now. You've got another week a week and a half to build a viz for us. And geography is quite an easy one actually, because most countries geography is the same. So everyone learns about earthquakes in more or less the same way. So if you can come up with a topic and build out a viz for us, it's really easy to submit it, and we will check it over, and then if it meets the syllabus, then we will publish it on the website, and that website is just free for teachers to access. And I think for us, the aim is really to empower teachers and to help them, assist them with teaching their students. And I think the recent pandemic has really brought to light the importance of teachers as well. I know in the UK that I feel like sometimes they're quite undervalued. So I think that they really deserve this, and any help that we can give them across the globe at this time would be really, really great. So if anyone would like to participate, we'd love you to participate. We've also got moderators as well. So we have an applications page there, and if you want to become a moderator, the role that you would be doing would be to check some vizzes. If we send you a viz, we might want you to check it against the global syllabus for us. And also, we would like you to help us just find topics on your syllabus as well. So, so between the UK and India, for example, you learn about history in a completely different way. So we want to know about what is on your syllabus, so we can try to at least make it quite consistent across the board and ask people to do topics that we know are done in multiple countries. Yeah, it's a really, really, I think it's a really fun initiative. It's also great to get kids involved as well. So especially if you have kids, if you're making a viz, you can test it that way. Ask your kids to have a look at it, and if they find it easy to understand and they enjoy it, then chances are it's something that we really, really, really would love for you to submit, and we would love to put it on our website. And part of learning for teachers is, that they want their students to enjoy their learning, and that's another reason we thought that doing it by visualization was so great, because it's interactive, kids love it, and that's where storytelling comes in. You can create impact with stories, but you can also spark interest, and I think that that's really what will help draw kids in as well. So yeah, I'd love you guys to get involved. I think Adam's just given you the details really, really helpfully in the chat there. But check out the website, check out the moderator page, and look at the gallery, because we have some really great vizzes in there already that people have submitted this month, and it will give you a good idea of the kind of thing we're looking for as well. And hopefully you can get some inspiration from that.
Thank you so much, Eve. That was really quite incredible. And the presentation itself was inspiring, and it gets the ideas flowing as far as what to do and what to look for. And also, this great initiative is going to help a lot of people. So I very much would love people to get more involved with the initiative and see what people can share and inspire in others. So especially with our youngsters, getting them in tune with data storytelling is going to be huge for our future and their future. So thank you so much. Next week, we're going to come back on Friday, and I just want to say goodbye and thanks for everyone for joining. Have a great week.
Thanks, guys.